everybody. Welcome to Zoom at 8. My name is Julianne Peterson, and I'm with Old Capital Lending. And I am your host tonight, as well as every Tuesday night for Zoom at 8. We've been doing this for 3.5 years. I was looking for a way to support a mentor program that didn't have an ecosystem. And we have closed quite a few loans, deals just within this community here. So, if you're new to multifamily and you don't have, attorneys, cost segregation, insurance people, you don't have a Rolodex of contacts, this is a great place to do it. You can find investors, you can find sponsors, you can find, syndicators right here in this room. And they come and go. Some weeks we've got more people, sometimes we have less, but I usually have 3 weeks out of the month, I have speakers. And then that other week we've got networking only. So the speaker comes, we usually are visiting with a speaker about 45 minutes, and then we'll also break out into networking about 30 minutes typically after the speakers. So tonight, we are excited to have Yakov Smart with us tonight. He has been here before, and I wanted him to come back because he does some major, some really cool stuff on marketing. So I thought it would be great for him to come back. There's not a lot going on. We're at the end of the year. People are starting to kind of sit back and kind of figure out, what happened this year. For us at Old Capital, our numbers are just where they were last year. We closed $1.2 billion a year in multifamily loans. Our numbers are growing. My numbers, I closed more loans, but the numbers were the same because why? We are reducing our sales prices. But that doesn't mean that deals are not getting done. We just closed a deal last week. And more are coming. So don't stop underwriting deals. I was in Dallas last week for the Marcus and Millichap Forum. I was also in Atlanta with Chris Collins, who did a magnificent job as an MC. He's in the house tonight. And we heard from other syndicators that are saying still underwrite, still deals out there. But be very, very, very careful when you're underwriting and going after deals, because the debt is playing a huge part in making these deals work. If the price is right and the debt is right, then the deal will work, right? So now let's get on with the show. Tonight, I'm very excited to have Yakov Smart. He's been here before. And I thought it would be a perfect timing to get him back in in this Zoom at 8 because, there's a lot of people that are getting into this and they don't have a deal and they're trying to figure out what is my value? Where can I bring value? If there's not a lot of deals, I can find people that have deals, but how do I capital raise? And that's what Yakov does. He is here to help us understand how to capital raise. In fact, Yakov is considered to be the leading expert when it comes to attracting high net worth investors and raising capital online. He's the author of Disrupting LinkedIn and a sought after authority by top real estate entrepreneurs across the US and Canada. To date, Yakov's innovative strategies and systems have resulted in tens of millions of private capital raised to fund real estate deals. Yakov has shared the stage with Samantha Dibinacci of, I'm sure I just hacked up her name, but of Bravo's hit show $1 Million Listing, and been a guest on numerous media outlets, including Zoom at 8. A resident of Scottsdale, Arizona, today Yakov is the proud leader of Investor Attraction Academy, where his programs give real estate entrepreneurs proven tools and techniques for raising more capital and finding investors beyond their current networks. You know, I am so excited, and I want you guys to help give it up for a night of learning with Yakov Smart. Thank you so much, Yakov. Appreciate you being here tonight. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. It is good to be back. It's been a minute. I know we got to meet in person at UP22, so that was awesome. And yeah, I see some familiar faces, a lot of new faces, a lot of great stuff to share. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, the relevancy of this with it being around that time, you know, late November, you know, people thinking about planning for the next year. I think this is going to hit home for a lot of people. And just so I can keep on track, you know, with time, Julie, we're going to go for about 45 minutes. Is that correct,
That
including
sounds good.
Q&A? Okay,
That sounds good.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Now, listen, I would love it if everybody would give Yakov the speaker view. So go to the right-hand side of your screen, pull down those 9 little dots and bring it to speaker view, and you should see Yakov right there in view. And now he's gonna share his screen and be ready to roll. All right, take it away.
Awesome. Let's do this. So before we start, I'm curious because I want to make sure this is tailored towards, you know, where you're at and where you're going. So let me know in the chat box, for those of you who are here live, how much capital you've raised in the past 12 months. You know, if it's zero, it's zero. That's okay too. But how much capital you've raised in the past 12 months? Or you can also let me know what types of deals you're looking to raise money for. So I'll give you about 15, 20 seconds, just, you know, throw out a number. I want to see what level of experience people have in the capital raising journey, if you will. And I'll just kind of rattle it off. So got some people just getting started. We got some people 750,000, 1.8 mil, 2 mil, 7.7 mil.
No judgment, friends. Come on.
Yep, 7 million. Yeah, and there's no right or wrong answer. I just, from what I understand, just even from the introductions, a lot of you are just kind of getting started. So this is going to be relevant for you, whether you're just getting started or if you've raised some capital already and you really want to grow and scale it beyond, right? There's some different ways that we can talk about doing that today. So let's jump right in. We're going to talk about how to raise more capital and find high net worth investors on Autopilot. Okay. So the way that we're going to do this, we're going to take some questions towards the end. I have some slides you can see. I'm going to go off script, if you will, a couple times here as well. I'm going to go on the whiteboard, share some things, just kind of feel it out to keep this nice and entertaining for you and just making it highly relevant. So what we're going to talk about, number one question you should be asking yourself when it comes to raising capital on social media, probably not what you think, probably a very different way of looking at it than you may have heard before. We're going to talk about why your LinkedIn profile is an untapped gold mine for raising capital, attracting investors, and really building that investor database. Okay. And we're going to talk about some of the hidden systems for adding investors so you can scale your capital raising and build your list on Autopilot without having to necessarily create content or waste money on ads. Okay. So why you're here, other than being here at Zoom at 8, which alone is a great experience, but I believe you're here because you're facing a set of challenges. Some of you mentioned this when we were doing introductions, not having access to enough private money. Obviously, you know, it's a great value add to bring that list of investors to the table to bring potential money to deals, right? Some of you have raised before and know what a struggle it can be when you've got a great deal lined up, especially now when the deals have been few and far between and you don't have the capital to take it down, right? So that's a big challenge for a lot of people. We're going to talk about some ways to start to solve that challenge, okay? I believe a lot of you, the reason you're here is you're having trouble finding investors who can be LPs, passive investors beyond your current network. Okay, so we're going to talk about what the framework looks like for creating that online. Okay. I also believe that some of you may have dabbled in online marketing, social media, and wasted time and money on branding, ineffective marketing, things of that nature, right? In confusion, right? There's not enough time in the day to have to reinvent the wheel. So we're going to talk about proven strategy, frameworks, ways of thinking, things that you can implement as you continue to grow and scale your capital raising. Okay. Obviously, what are the costs of these challenges? Losing out on deals, paying a premium for access to capital. Some of you have done this. You brought in other people to raise for you. You know, the person with the money has the leverage, right? Just like with a lot of things, headaches, right? The constant stress of not knowing where you're going to get that money from and wasting time and money without making that progress. I don't know about you, but I love momentum. I love progress. I think we're wired that way as entrepreneurs. And this is an area where a lot of people, even the conversations I had at UP22, a lot of people are struggling with building momentum here, and especially putting the right types of systems in place, right? So solution is a turnkey system for attracting investors beyond your current networks. You can grow that database, and as a result of the database, raise a lot more capital. I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to squash a myth that a lot of people may have been led to believe. Those of you who are experienced probably know this already. Those of you who are newer, we need to reinforce this, right? So a lot of people think that when they have a great deal, the money will come, that it's just about getting a great deal. I challenge you. I say the opposite is true. Again, talk to the people here who have raised millions already. You want to grow that database. Even if you're not going to have a deal for 3 to 6 months, you want to plant those seeds, right? You want to dig the well before you're thirsty, as they say. So this is all about building that investor database so that when you do have a deal, or when someone wants you to come in on a deal, you're bringing investors to the table. You're bringing potential money to the table. So this is essentially about list building and growing that network of high net worth investors who can pull the trigger and become passive investors. So who am I? A lot of you know me already. Some of you don't. I'll give you the quick rundown here. Not going to tell you my whole life story because I hate it when people do that, when they present online. So I'm based out of Phoenix, Arizona, Phoenix, Scottsdale area. Been in business since 2016, 2017. Julie mentioned I authored the book Disrupting LinkedIn. Been working with capital raisers and real estate investors since 2020. You may have seen me on some of the biggest podcasts in the space, the Best Ever Show, Radcliffe's podcast, a number of different shows. And I've been able to collaborate with some of the biggest names in real estate syndication and alternative investing. Tens of millions have been raised in private capital as a result of the system. And these days, our main focus is on working with people like you who want to raise a lot more capital, scale their capital raising, grow their investor list, and find a way to do it from anywhere without necessarily having to go and network, to be able to build that trust one to many. That's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. So the people we've worked with, for example, Mark, he's booked more than 200 calls using our system. Amy, who some of you know, you can see she did a raise earlier this year where $1 million plus of that came from using some of these systems, right? Then you have Scott, who's raised 20 million plus from his time working with us, probably considerably more now. And, this system at its core, what it comes down to is the rapid investor attraction system, right? So I'm really going to condense this down for you and give you a new way of thinking about this. And we're going to build upon that foundation, right? So let's start off with the important question. The number one question you should be asking yourself when it comes to raising capital on social media. So drum roll, take a pause, think about what that question could be. And that question is this: what's the best way to stand out, build trust, and create real relationships with passive investors, right? Specifically, people who can be LPs, invest with you in your deals without selling your soul, right? Without doing a bunch of stuff that you don't want to do, without wasting a lot of time, without, banging your head on the ceiling, right? Banging your head on the wall, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. This system, this framework, I don't care what channels you're using, I don't care what you're raising capital for, how much you want to raise, it's prevalent across the board. Okay, so here's the framework, right? And this is also a framework for, building trust at scale and marketing something of value online, right? And it's especially important for investor attraction, right? So we have traffic. This is eyeballs. This is reaching people. Okay, getting them through your front door. Okay, getting them in the front door so they can start to know, like, and trust you. Doing that on autopilot, though. Okay, doing that in an automated, leveraged way. Being able to connect with that person, and then from there, booking a phone call and then turning that person to a new investor, right? So this is a framework. It's going to hold true now. It's going to hold true 5 years from now, 10 years from now. This is the online game that we're playing. This is the types of systems that you want to build. So let's talk about that. When we say front door, what does that mean? Okay. So my favorite way to do this, you've probably heard about lead magnets and ebooks and opt-ins and all that kind of stuff. I want to debunk some of that because it can seem very complicated. I want to make it a lot clearer for you, right? So my favorite way to do it is what's called a perfect investor attraction webinar. Okay. So what does that do? It does a couple different things for you. It collects leads, right? So people opt in, they're automatically in your database. Now, if you're wondering, okay, what does that mean? So just like before you registered for this meeting, you put in your name, your email address, some other information. Now you're in the database. Now you can start building that relationship and nurturing that person one to many, potentially in an automated way. Okay. It builds trust at scale, right? So It's one thing to have the same conversation over and over and over again, but what if you had something, and this is literally an asset that you could have in your marketing, where if someone watched this short presentation, typically about 15 to 25 minutes, if they watched it, no matter where you met them, they would get to know you a little bit better. They would understand your investment thesis, your strategy, your credibility, and you'd also be able to address some of the big objections or misconceptions in their minds, right? Really creating a shift in their thinking, right? So I'm big on, and some of you who know me know this to be true. I always tell people I'm not the best at sales, but I love marketing, right? Because I only talk to people, as you should, who are already pre-qualified and pre-sold. I want to know a little bit about them, right? I want to be able to build that trust one to many. So the Perfect Investor Attraction webinar uses a proven psychological framework, right? And so when we talk about investor attraction webinars, we're not talking about something that's deal specific where you're pitching a deal on a webinar. Different topic, different time. We're talking about an intro presentation, right? Just like you would give if you were in front of a room full of high net worth individuals. And the best indication that your investor attraction webinar is effective is that it inspires action, right? It gets people to want to book a call, it gets people to want to learn more about investing with you, okay? Now, the great thing about this investor attraction webinar in what's called a funnel, right? That's the technical term for some automation. It's automated, it's set it and forget it, and the follow-up can come with it, right? So let's say, and some of you have attended some of my pre-recorded webinars, obviously we're doing this live, right? And of course, you can use that same slide deck, that same presentation live, but in the automated webinar, you set it and forget it, and the follow-up is automated, right? So you can have 7 to 10 follow-up emails automated. Some of you have heard of the term drip campaign, where now someone's hearing from you 7 to 10 times without you having to manually chase them, follow up, do any of that BS, right? So that's all included in the funnel. And what it does too, let's say you're on a podcast, right? And let's say, the host says, hey, where can people go if they want to learn more about you, right? What do most people say? They say, well, go to our website, xyzcapital.com. But there's a problem with that, right? So what's the problem? The problem is, I listen to you on a podcast. I like what you have to say. I go to your website. I'm like, okay, cool, awesome. Maybe I really resonate with the website. And I think to myself, hey, I'm going to get to that. When I'm going to put it on my to-do list, I'm going to get to them to reach out to that person. I want to talk about this. Problem is, I forget. Problem is, there's a million and one things going on in my life, right? What this funnel does, instead of you saying go to xyzcapital.com, what if you said go to xyzcapital.com/training? We have a free online training that we've put together that shows you X, Y, and Z, right? So they go to that training, it takes them to a page, they enter their name, their email, and whether or not they're an accredited investor. And now you've captured that lead, right? Now they're in your system, and now the follow-up, the relationship building can very much be automated when the initial touch points are done for you, right? Through automation. So it qualifies the lead, right? So again, the first thing that we have to do is capture the data, capture the lead, capture interest, capture attention. And if you just send people to a website, no matter how good your website is, you're going to lose a percentage of people that way, right? So that's another perk of having this funnel. So what are the parts of this perfect investor attraction webinar funnel, right? So you have your slide deck. So obviously you're looking at slides. It's important to have visuals, right? You have your registration page or a landing page that captures people's information. So they put in their information, and now they're in your database, right? Now they're in your system. Now the relationship is started, except instead of you starting to build the relationship one-on-one, you're doing it in an automated way. This can happen any time of day while you sleep, okay? The thank you page says, thank you for opting in. Here's what to expect next. Then you've got the replay room where they can go and they can watch the recording of the webinar, the presentation. And you've got the automated booking link page. So I know some of you, if I were to bet, I would bet some of you, someone reaches out to you, what do? You say, okay, great, I'm going to call you, right? And it's not by appointment, it's you're just calling people, you're being reactive, right? And it becomes very difficult to position yourself as an authority if you're not taking calls by appointment only, right? Yes, there might be a lot of people to talk to, but ideally what you want happening is you want people going to a page, and some of you have done this, with other people you book meetings with, like a Calendly or any of those booking pages. They fill in their information, and it's a preset appointment on your calendar and their calendar, and they're getting notifications that they show up to an appointment. What does that do? That creates a level of respect, that creates a level of trust, and they know that this is a meeting, this is a commitment that they've made, right? So before someone's going to commit to wiring you a check, right, or wiring you money or writing you a check, you want them to commit to meeting with you, of course, right? So having an automated process is going to save you time. And it's the other thing too, it's that B word, right? That B word is bandwidth, right? Not a lot of people talk about this, but in this business, there's so many moving pieces. If you're raising money, doing deals, building relationships, anytime you can save time, energy, and bandwidth, you're going to be able to go so much further along and be able to scale faster, right? So when I see people manually managing their calendar or, just calling people and trying to chase them down, if they're a potential investor, it needs to be by appointment only. It needs to be automated, okay? What it also does, it tags people in what's called an autoresponder. So some of you may know what an autoresponder is, some of you may not. An autoresponder basically allows you to send emails at scale, okay? As far as which ones are better, I always get asked these questions. Hey, which CRM do you recommend? Hey, which autoresponder, which tool? A lot of them do the same things, right? Most of our clients use ActiveCampaign, but a lot of them do the same things, right? So it's not necessarily about which technology you're using. It's about if you're using it strategically, if you've got it set up in an effective way, okay? And then the post-webinar emails, right? So typically we have 7 to 10 emails that go out that build trust, reinforce some of the points from the webinar. And again, these aren't emails that say invest now, click this button, invest now. None of that like gimmicky BS, right? Instead, it's building a relationship with you. It's highlighting key points. It's overcoming objections, doing a lot of the selling for you in an automated way, right? So that when someone talks to you or after they've talked to you, they're feeling more comfortable, they're feeling warmer, and it really shortens the cycle of them first hearing about you to them investing with you, especially if they're a complete stranger online, right? So top reasons to have this particular system dialed in before anything else. And when we work with people, one thing we do is we build out all these systems for you, right? For this investor traction webinar, you're going to stand out to investors. I mean, think about it. Some of you who have invested as LPs, how many people who you've invested with before you talk to them or after that initial conversation sent you a webinar that established their credibility, where you could hear them speak, where you clearly saw their investment thesis, how they reduced risk, where they overcame some of your concerns and built that trust? Very rare, right? You immediately stand out when you have this. It establishes credibility, right? There's something magical. And some of you, you're getting this live, you're hearing the sound of my voice. Even when it's pre-recorded, there's something magical about hearing someone speak and share a message, okay? So it establishes credibility, captures leads, okay? We talked about, instead of just sending someone to your website, now you have someone opting in, you're capturing that lead. And it automates the follow-up process, right? It's really difficult. The reason why we hear that follow-up is so important is that so few people do it. Well, what if your first 7 to 10 follow-up points you could automate just by plugging someone's information in or having them opt into a page, right? So this front door system, it's really valuable no matter which channels you're using for marketing, right? No matter where people are coming from, even if you're meeting in person, even if you're meeting people on Zoom at 8, right? Before you connect with them or after that first intro call, hey, we had a great conversation. By the way, instead of me explaining everything one-on-one, how about you watch this short video I recorded before the call, right? That way you'll be well informed. We'll save us both time. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have, right? So that's a really big thing that we're big on. And for me, again, one of the things that I just hate is repeating myself, right? So if I can have that be on autopilot, said in an articulate way, said in a concise way, it makes your life easier and you're building that trust at scale, okay? And the biggest thing, it's saving you time. Listen, I think time is the thing that we're all after, right? Time is really what we want more of. This is going to allow you to have more of that time, okay? So now, we're going to talk about the different places where you could potentially find investors, okay? So how do we get people in the front door? How do we actually go about and find people, okay? Glad you asked. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I'm actually going to show you. I'm going to actually pull this up on a whiteboard. I'm going to give you a buffet today of places you can go to. I'll recommend some of my favorites. We'll talk about LinkedIn specifically for a few minutes, but let's actually jump into a buffet. And by buffet, I mean, what are all the places you can find investors online, right? So I'm just going to give you a list. Some of you are doing some of these already. A lot of you, I would say, have heard that you should be using a lot of these, and we're going to debunk that here in a second. Okay, so LinkedIn is one place. Facebook, we'll call it organic. I'll explain what that means. Facebook ads, SEO. I'm going to give you probably about 10, 15 different ones here, and then we'll debunk it, right? So we got SEO, we've got Instagram, we've got YouTube ads, we've got having your own podcast, we've got being a guest on podcasts, got, being a guest speaker on Zoom calls, Twitter, blogging, TikTok, could go on, right? There's some different, there's PPC ads, there's media buys, sponsorships, all these different things, right? We could go on, right? These can be, some of these can translate in person, but this is a list of just things that also translate online, right? So then the question becomes, okay, there's all these different tools, all these different streams. And by the way, when we say organic, and we could break these down even further, right? When we say organic, that means to utilize this in this way, you don't need to have additional ad spend, right? That's all that organic means, right? Versus advertising, we're paying to play for ads, right? Advertising tends to be a little bit more complicated. So a lot of people will say, okay, well, I need to be everywhere because I'm Superman, I'm Superwoman, I need to do everything. And I'm here to tell you it's impossible out of the gate, right? Especially if you don't have a huge team, it's possible to do all these things well at once. So my recommendation when we work with clients is pick a maximum of 3 to focus on during the next 90 days, a maximum of 3. For a lot of you, just 2 of these, doing them well, will be enough to start getting more investors in the door, right? To start building out that list, right? These are traffic sources. These are potential channels, but you don't want to overextend yourself. And the other thing that we're not talking about here too is just posting and hoping, right? Just saying, okay, I'm going to post content to 5 different social media and people will reach out. The problem with posting, you don't control who sees it, right? There's a little bit of a probability factor. There's an algorithm. So instead of posting, I'm big on direct messages. I'm big on direct relationship building, and I'll walk you through a framework for doing that here in a moment. So let's jump into the presentation, right? So that buffet, LinkedIn is one of the best places for most people, right? A lot of people are underutilizing it for reaching investors. Why is it a gold mine for reaching investors? You can get hyper-specific targeted, so you can really choose who your message gets in front of, right? You can pick people who are high net worth individuals in the areas that you want to target, people who have things in common with you potentially. You have an opportunity for volume and automation. You can automate a lot of the initial outreach process, okay? You can send direct messages at scale and start those conversations. And we'll talk about the MEC framework here in a moment. And the other thing, and I've got my Zoom bar here, you can take people from LinkedIn. And here's the thing with all social media, right? We want to extract people from social media to our email list, or better yet, to a phone conversation if they're the right fit, right? We're not talking about pitching people in Messenger. We're not talking about doing any of that stuff, right? It's a conversation starter, just like going to an event would be a conversation starter. So here's a couple of examples of potential lists available on LinkedIn. 14,000 plus owners of dental practices in the US. One potential database you can tap into. Another one would be CEOs, 5,000 employees just in the state of Arizona, where I live. Great thing about lists on LinkedIn, you don't have to buy the list. You don't have to spend $10,000 with a list broker, right? You can build these lists on LinkedIn within a matter of minutes. The key is to get your targeting dialed in, right? Here's another example, angel investors in the US, 7,000 plus just on this list. And there's a number of lists, number of scenarios and combinations that you can implement, right? So what is the framework for starting conversations, okay, on LinkedIn specifically? What can you really automate, right? So imagine you have a list of potential investors. So think about someone who's a high net worth individual, doctors, dentists, entrepreneurs, attorneys, professional investors, VCs, all these different types of people, blue collar business owners, people have sold their businesses, all these different types of people we can target. They're on a targeted list that you can create on LinkedIn, okay? From that list, they receive a connection request coming from your personal profile. It's just like an invitation to be friends on Facebook, right? From there, you're gonna have a percentage of those people accept. Now they're in what's called your LinkedIn network. And now your mission is to create a conversation. Your mission is to start the connection process without sounding spammy, without pitching them on a deal out of the gate, right? Without doing any of that stuff. And just like you would at an event, just like you would at a trade show, moving those conversations beyond that first meeting, right? Getting them to meet one-on-one, right? Or getting them to opt in and subscribe, right? So before we talk about key mistakes, let's talk about a framework for doing that, right? And this applies to other social media as well. This is my direct messaging framework that we work with people on inside of our Investor Attraction Academy program, right? So we call it MEC, right? So what does that stand for? Okay. So M is meet. So just like, if you and I met at an event, right? We're walking, I saw you in the hall, you saw me, whatever magical reason led us to walk up to each other, we meet, right? We start a conversation, shake hands, whatever the case may be, right? I say, hi, my name's Yakov. You introduce yourself, right? The next thing, this is where people go wrong, right? People say hi first, and then they start pitching and vomiting their stuff on you, right? We don't want to do that. So instead, we're going to establish two things, right? What are these two things? We're going to establish commonality and curiosity, right? That is the ultimate icebreaker online. If you can just show people what you have in common with them, and it has to be real, don't BS this, don't make this up, but if you have something truly in common with that person, and you have something that's going to be relevant and current to them, that's going to create curiosity. Give you an example, right? Right now, a lot of people's portfolios in the stock market have taken a dump, right? Big time. So there's a legitimate problem. That's where I see a lot of investor attraction. A lot of people haven't made the jump yet. They're not quick enough to adapt. Where before, a couple of years ago, we could talk about, hey, high returns, passive income, all those things, all those buzzwords, those are still cool. But now it's about really solving a pain and problem, right? It's not as aspirational. You're problem solving. People have a big problem. They're losing out on their retirement. They're losing big money. They don't know what the hell to do because they don't know what cash flow investing even means and who to trust, right? So you can come in and really right now solve a big problem. I heard there's like 4 trillion sitting in retirement accounts right now, right? A lot of that through self-directed IRAs that can go towards investing in your deals when you have trust, when you have the relationship, right? And the next thing is to continue the relationship, right? So continue the relationship, continue the conversation, move that conversation outside of that social media channel, ideally into an intro phone call, all right? So that's the framework that the messages are based out of, right? And so when we look at this flow chart and we understand it, this follow-up process can be automated as well, right? You plug it in, that part's automated. The key is to have it be automated without looking automated, right? That's the most important thing. So again, short, concise, a really sounding conversational, keeping it highly relevant so you stand out, so you're popping, okay? So key mistakes to avoid, right? So posting and hoping, very unintentional, using social media, any of these channels, if you're just blasting stuff out, hoping someone's going to reach out. I mean, I guess it could happen, but not very likely, especially if you're starting out of the gate, you don't have a big network built up yet, you don't have a big following, right? Sounding stuffy, right? A lot of people are so serious, especially on LinkedIn or their investor marketing, where it's very much just data driven, facts. Where's the emotion? Where's the humanness, right? That's really important. Especially imagine someone's a green investor, right? Imagine they've got money sitting in the stock market. They've never been an LP before. They're scared. They know they should be doing something. When we feel more comfortable, when we laugh, when we feel an emotion, cortisol in our brains, that stress hormone starts to go down, right? So it's easier to make decisions, it's easier to feel connected, and we're all human. We want people that we can relate with and build relationships with long term, or at least most of us anyway, right? And then pitching out of the gate. We're not talking about breaking SEC law. We're not talking about pitching out of the gate, telling people how amazing your deal is. Truth is, if you don't have that relationship, people don't really care about how good your deal is, right? I know, especially maybe sometimes they do, but most of the time, especially if you have no prior relationship, that guard is going to be up. They don't care about how good the deal is until they trust you, right? So I think what happened the past couple of years, what a lot of people would do is they would just build these email lists and they would just blast out their deals. That was the whole marketing strategy. Hey, I'm just going to get people to opt in and then I'm going to blast out my deals and, collect money. A lot harder to do now, right? Because there's a bigger wall up. There's more trust that needs to be built. And you need to have those real relationships. That's why I recommend you actually talk to people, build those relationships and create an experience, right? Instead of pitching out of the gate. Really big difference. And the biggest thing is forgetting who you're talking to. We could talk about this for a while. I see a lot of investors, they start throwing out lingo about cap rates and IRRs and all that stuff. And people don't know what the hell a cap rate is or what IRR is or any of that, right? They don't even quite understand how passive income works, right? So there's an educational process. So when we want to grab someone's attention, which is the most important thing to do online, we have to understand where are they at. Do they even see themselves as an investor, or do they just see themselves as someone who's busy and who should be doing something because they're getting whacked by the stock market, right? And that's what the messaging needs to speak to, right? So there's a big disconnect, and this is what I'm passionate about, the alternative investing space. There's a big disconnect between people raising capital in the alternative investing space and the people who have money that actually need to be investing, where they're going to be screwed by the stock market, right? There's a big communication disconnect, and that's the problem that we're solving at Investor Attraction Academy, right? So I want to show you one more framework, and then we'll take some questions, and I'll share, for those of you who want to connect and have a conversation, I'll share how to do that as well. But I want to show you kind of my outlook on kind of where we're at with capital raising and relationship building, right? So let's clear the drawings here, right? So I think a combination of three things are happening right now, right? So I think, first of all, the first thing that's happening is, overall people are tighter, more skeptical, that type of thing, right? So the average person, they've heard about recession talks and all that stuff by the media. They're getting brainwashed. So there's a little bit more of a tightness. There's a little bit more of a discernment. It's not just about, oh, hey, I've got some extra money. Here's a hot deal. Let's rock, right? People are a little bit more risk averse. The conversations become a lot more about how you can mitigate risk than the upside, right? I'm going to repeat that because a lot of people don't get that. The conversations become a lot more, it needs to be a lot more about mitigating risk than all this amazing upside and crazy returns and all this other stuff, right? So that's one factor that's happening right now, okay? People are tighter and more skeptical, okay? The other thing that's happening is there's more of an openness to alternative investing, okay? Most people have heard about crypto. Most people have heard about REITs, that type of thing, right? That it's not just the stock market. That investing, alternative investing is out there. They may not know what a syndication is, but they know that there's people who have made money investing in alternative investing. On the flip side, they also know there's Ponzi schemes. There's shows like American Greed, right? So that awareness is there, right? And the third thing that's happening is the pain is real, right? So the pain of what's happening in the stock market for a lot of busy professionals, it is a real pain. You're not selling something aspirational. You are solving a pain. You're selling painkillers instead of vitamins, right? And it's really important to be positioning yourself as that, okay? And so below this, what's happening right now too is the online, let's talk about the online space, right? Online social media, you have an opportunity to build real relationships, okay? There is a little bit more noise, right? But most of the noise is noisy, right? So most of the noise, it doesn't stand out. It doesn't resonate to people. It's not relevant, right? So it's easier to ignore stuff. So the key thing, and this is where people are going to win, if you can grab people's attention, stand out, have a unique voice, and really address that pain, I think there is more opportunity in the next 12 to 18 months to build that investor database and raise capital than there's probably ever been, right? We're really in a time where things are coming together. And that's part of what we do at Investor Attraction Academy is work with people to bridge that gap and leverage what I think is a massive opportunity that we're in, right? Because the people who start investing right now as LPs in your deals, they're going to be the most loyal investors because there's a lot of people. Listen, I heard this story from a buddy. Some of you may have heard me mention this. He met a couple at an event. They had lost 1.2 million in the stock market over the past 12 months, 1.2 mil. Guy was a doctor, wife was a pharmacist, and they were looking for something that could get them at least 3% cash on cash. They would be thrilled with 3% cash on cash, right? Most of you can do considerably better than that, but that's a lot of people right now, right? So we have a gap to bridge. We have a massive opportunity to educate people and really save a lot of people's retirements and lives in a way, right? So it's a huge opportunity. The gap, though, is having the right systems in place, having messaging that stands out, and having the right marketing. And that's key. And that's what we work with people on. So how do you put this in implementation? What are the best next steps? I'm going to share this with you, and then we'll jump into some questions here, okay? So you want to build the front door first. Like you want to have this stuff built out first. I'm all about imperfect action, but having some of these systems, these automations built out first so you can scale is really, really important. When we work with people, like I mentioned, we actually build those for you because otherwise it can be a learning curve. It can be something that takes 6 months or longer to figure out how do you press the button? How do you set up the automation? What do you put in the follow-up emails? All that kind of stuff, right? So we take that off your shoulders. Messaging matters, right? You've got to be more relevant now. There's a lot of noise. Good news about that is if you are relevant, you stand out more easily because there are a lot of people doing terrible marketing out there, okay? That experience, like I mentioned, can take a while, 6 months or longer. So best solution, right? And I'll share, Dave's story here real quick, and I'll share how to get more information. Then we'll jump into some questions. So Dave was probably in a position where a lot of you are. He had raised a little bit of capital. He wanted to scale. His big thing was growing his database. As you can see, what that's done, He's been able to raise a lot more money just, within a year of doing this, having an automated system in place, substantially grow his network. And the key thing is taking a strategic approach. I believe everyone's a little bit different. I believe everyone's a little bit unique. That's why, there's no cookie cutter 100% cookie cutter template that everyone can use, right? It's about customizing this. Who's the investor that you're looking for? What can you say? And how can you position yourself, even if you haven't done a deal yet, even if you haven't raised a lot of money yet, as someone that people can trust, okay? That's a big challenge to solve, right? So how do you experience the fastest results possible? What do you do next, right? So who is this for? If you're planning on raising a lot more capital over the next year and beyond for multiple deals, if you know what types of deals you want to raise capital for, you have a good idea of how you're going to structure your offerings. If you want the fastest results possible, especially on the build outs, you're not sitting there tinkering, building this kind of stuff out. And if you have a growth mindset, you want to think big, and you want an automated, scalable system that you can use for the long term, right? Because raising capital, building relationships, yes, there's short-term wins. Yes, there's short-term opportunities. It's a long game as well. So you want to be able to leverage both. So all you have to do, nothing to pitch you today. If this sounds like something you're interested in, here's what I want you to do. Go to findmoreinvestors.com/form, fill in your information. That way we can find out a little bit about you, your capital raising goals, and then you're going to be able to request a time on my calendar. We can connect, chat. I want to find out where you're at, where you're going, and see if what we have can be a good solution for you. My recommendation, people that I'm talking to right now, because it's early November, it's a great time to start getting these systems built out, to start having the strategic plan heading into 2023. Because guess what? New Year's resolutions come around. People are sitting with family between Christmas and New Year's. What are they talking about? What are they thinking about? Money, goals. What did I do? What didn't I do? And it's a great time to be marketing more aggressively that first quarter, because money is on people's minds, especially with the losses in the stock market people had over the past 12 months. So all you need to do, findmoreinvestors.com/forum. There's zero obligation. Fill out your information, then you'll be redirected to my calendar. We can find a time to chat. Want to connect with you, want to get to know as many of you as I possibly can, and work with those of you who are a good fit on getting the system implemented so you can raise more capital and grow your investor database. So with that said, let's open up the floor for some questions.
All right. Can we, do you want to unshare? Do you want to leave that open?
I can unshare.
There we go.
I'll drop the link in the chat too, so people.
Sounds good. And then will you share with me that deck?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. And then when I send out an email on Fridays, you guys, I'll send that also, that deck as well. So look for that. Let's open it up for any questions. And typically I'm the one that has all the questions. So
well, I've got all the answers. So.
Here's the deal. On a daily basis, I get questions. Hi, Julie. It looks like we have similar interests. Can we connect on LinkedIn? And I'm like, delete. How do I get my attitude? I need an attitude adjustment, because I want to ask other people to come on board, right? I want to reach out to other people, but I don't like when people reach out to me and ask that question. Hey, feel slimy to me.
Yeah.
So Yakov, how do I get over that? How do I recognize that I understand that's what they're trying to do, but help me out here.
So we've got to give people, we don't have to, but I was going to say we got to give people the benefit of the doubt, but we don't. We want to be selective, right? So the first thing, that the mistake that they're making, you don't want your connection request to be customized, right? Like if I get a connection request and someone's got a specific note in there, unless I know them, I'm like, yeah, I know what's coming next, right? So that connection request, leave that blank, right? It's more casual. It's like, okay, this person's cool. They want to connect with me. I don't know why, but they do. Like, I'm open, right? So I think as a tactical thing, don't customize the connection request. When someone connects, and don't hit them up right away, right? Even if you're using automation, you want to delay that. But when someone connects, now that first message, you've got space, make it relevant, right? So we pay attention to what's relevant for us, right? So, and I don't think necessarily that you have to do anything differently in how you're receiving it. Just make sure that when you're delivering it, that you're not putting that like, hey, would love to connect on LinkedIn, like that kind of BS message. Because people are like, there's a reason, right? Now you just want to be my friend, as cool as I am, right? So there's that. And then when you're reaching out, again, keep it MEC, keep it relevant. Don't take it personal. I think a lot of people are very open on LinkedIn when it's relevant, right? We all want things that are relevant for us that can make life better, right? Until we realize they can make our life better, we don't care, right? Because there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of people vying for our attention, there's a lot of opportunities, right? The more successful we become. So the attitude adjustment is be specific. You don't have to, like, if I think that someone's gonna like start bombarding me, I'm not gonna accept at this point, right? But if I accept and I see that first message and it's relevant and I'm curious, I'm like, okay, cool. That's awesome. But yeah. And then what I like to do, one thing everyone can do too, like when someone reaches out and they don't customize the request, I like to tell people this, and you can have an assistant do it too if you've got one. Like, hey, Julie, looks like we know some of the same people and we're both involved in the real estate investing space. Just curious, what made you decide to send me a connection request, right? And now I want to know, like, what's your intention? What made you decide to send me a connection request? Oftentimes it's because people are interested in your stuff, right? Maybe they're interested in getting a loan from you guys. Maybe they're shopping around and they don't have necessarily the courage to be direct and say, hey, I was interested in learning more, right? They're still kind of uncertain. But if you ask them that question, like, well, actually, I heard you on Zoom at 8 and, we got this deal coming up and funny you asked because I'm in the market, right? So asking that question is really key. And yeah, learning to love people.
That's I like that last piece. That's a very valid statement. I like it. Thank you. All right, Jeff, what do you got?
I guess just a comment, Yakov. A lot of the stuff that you covered was really, the messaging side, but I'd like to hear from you on your thoughts around preparing your profile for fishing, right? You're going into the ocean in your boat. I think for my taste, what I've done is a lot of work on my personal profile. I explain what I do, how I do it, who I'm doing it for. I put content about technology because I do that. So, kind of curious on how you prepare your clients on the profile, even before they start sending out messages, to kind of make sure that when someone looks at them, they understand, who they are in essence.
Well, the biggest thing you can do is make sure that it actually speaks to someone who'd be interested in investing without being like hardcore, like, hey, we give people amazing returns, like not necessarily that, but more so like, hey, what are the real problems? What's the conversation happening in people's minds? And starting there and then sharing a little bit about your story, right? Most people go overboard and just talk about their story. And until you have someone's attention, they don't care about your story, right? There's so much talk in marketing and advertising about storytelling. Well, you have to have attention before you can tell that story, right? If you start just like in person, if someone just like starts talking at you for 10 minutes, you're not going to be interested because you don't care why it's relevant, right? So that's the biggest thing with the profile. Just having it look clean. Spacing is very important too. It can't just be one big run-on paragraph, right? Easier on the eyes. And yeah, the profile isn't necessarily gonna win you investors, but it might lose you investors if it's awful, right? Or if it's just incomplete, it limits your visibility. So yeah, those are the couple quick things.
Is that something that you help as well on?
Yeah, we actually revamp it for people as part of the setup process. Yeah.
I think
Awesome.
that's been my experience, Julie, that oftentimes, I'll get the same type of messages that you referred to. I actually look at the profile, I'm like, makes zero sense. I have no idea what this is about. And then I'm like, yeah, delete. But
and you only give it a couple seconds too, because you're a human, you're online.
Yeah,
exactly. You're not gonna spend like 2 minutes like on your phone scrolling, like, oh, what is this? People don't do that. It's like you got a couple seconds, grab my attention, or I've got other things to do.
Yeah, I think it's very, very interesting. In the top quarter page of that profile, your banner, your message about what you do, even your phone number, email address. A lot of people miss the boat on that. And there's a very small amount of real estate where you could do yourself a gigantic favor to really explain what you do for a living and who you're trying to meet or whatnot. So
yeah, and explain it in a way that people actually understand, right? Without throwing like lingo and making it complex. Concise is the name of the game.
You bet.
Thank you. Jason.
Hey you guys. So I've already been reaching out to people on LinkedIn. I was doing the free trial for the LinkedIn premium account. But what I noticed is that once you if you stop using premium, then your number of searches goes down. Is there a way to go around that without you paying for LinkedIn Premium?
Not really. So the question is there a way to get around search limits without LinkedIn Premium? You can do some decent searches, but you get a lot more specific search with Sales Navigator, right? So if you're serious about, building out a list, it's an investment worth making.
Okay, thanks.
Good question. Anybody else?
Hey, Jill. Yeah. Hey, I have a question about preference. Some people have a company page and their own personal page.
Yeah.
Posting on the company page and then repost it on your personal, or just going straight to your personal?
Go straight to your personal. No one cares about the company page.
Okay.
Great question.
Easy enough.
Anyone else? What about Facebook?
What about it?
Are you finding it is as helpful for finding investors, high net worth investors, as effective?
So people are surprised with it, right? Because we initially, Facebook, like, really? Like, is it just people watching cat videos? The powerful thing about Facebook is there's groups based on interest, right? And we can really pinpoint based on groups and start those dialogues, right? So the group is like going to a big networking event, and the conversations, again, they happen in direct messages. It's a little more subtle. It's a little bit of a longer process. It's a little bit more manual. But yeah, I remember I was initially skeptical, and even in our lead generation, and it's amazing just how many people are receptive, again, when you're relevant, right? So it's more of a 1-2 punch. The way that I look at it too is we want to have diversification, just like we want to have with investing, right? You don't want to have just one lead source, right? Never the smartest approach. So at least have LinkedIn and Facebook. There's some different ones out there as well. But they're similar, yet it's a nuance to the conversation. There's a little bit more back and forth on Messenger before booking a meeting on Facebook, as opposed to LinkedIn. It's a little bit more direct, typically. Direct without being spammy.
Okay, so what Chris, hold on just a minute. Let me ask my question and I'm coming to you. So I want to make sure I understand what you do in terms of setting this up. If I use some CRM and it has automation, you guys will set it up and set up the automation on my system?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So typically, and by CRM, we're talking about like email marketing, right? Autoresponder, right? Or something where you can send emails at scale.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah.
you, yeah.
So
okay.
we set up the 7 to 10 emails, the initial kind of nurture campaign, right? We set all that up, write those for you, put that in there, set up the tags. So, and I don't know if we need to go too far down this rabbit hole, but you want to have 3 tags in your autoresponder, right? If you're raising capital, you want to have your active investors, right? So you speak to these people a little bit differently because they're already investing with you. So it's different with email marketing. You want to have your deal ready investors, so people you've talked to, kind of know how much capital they're bringing to the table. You know that when you've got the next deal, they're hearing about it first. Then you've got everyone else. We want to move people up that ladder, right? So we want to take people from opted in lead, someone interested, to booking a call and becoming deal ready. We want to take the deal ready people to active investors, right? These are the people who it's time to commit some capital, right? We want to take the active investors into repeat investors and referrals, right? So that's where email marketing comes into play. And even like having that list segmentation when you're building out the system is so important, because otherwise, even if you have a lot of people coming in who you meet through a variety of different places, all of a sudden what happens is you don't know who's who. And if you're sending the same email marketing to all 3 of those types of people, you're not going to have optimal results.
So you'll help us set that up.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds awesome. Chris.
Now I'll follow up on the Facebook question. I know there's like Facebook, like for your own profile, you could have just like a regular personal profile. You could have a business profile, a professional profile.
Sure.
Does it change, what you're doing as far as who sees it? If you go from personal to a business, do you have to add all new friends to it? What's the general like best way if I'm looking to meet new investors, I'm looking to put content out and hopefully everybody sees it. Hopefully people are receiving it well. That's kind of my intention of using Facebook and Instagram. Well, any of those things really, but specifically on this Facebook track.
So I'm big on the personal profiles. I don't know all the nuances of the different types of profiles. I think that's a newer thing. The way that we do it internally, the way that we recommend it is have a personal profile and base everything off that, right? Why make things more complex? LinkedIn has a creator mode too. I do recommend that. It's just a cool way of positioning the profile. It gets you more visibility, and I think it's easier on the eyes, and it establishes expertise a little bit differently. So everyone we work with, we set them up in creator mode. But with Facebook, as far as I've seen, the personal profiles will do the trick because it is personal. If you hit 5,000 friends, you'll want to delete some people maybe who aren't relevant anymore, but then people can also follow you beyond that.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Well, I'll ask one more follow-up. Maybe anyone else, I probably might be the only person that has this question, but like when you have like the 1,000 people who randomly message you on Facebook or like try to add you, I feel like there's two camps. There's like add everyone so they hopefully see your content, but then there's the like, oh, I don't know any of those people. They're probably just trying to send me content. Is there a mentality there?
I'll tell you what I do. So
Yeah.
I'll have my assistant go in, and if we have mutual friends, my rule is, it's going to sound silly, but like if they look like a bot, don't add them, because then they're going to start like hitting me up and like there's weird stuff that people say. I'll put it that way, right? So I'm like, if they look like a bot, if it's like a weird profile with like no friends, then just like, smell that stuff, delete that stuff, right? But everyone else, like we have 20 mutual friends. Okay, cool. I'll add you, but I want to message you as soon as I add you, though, right? I don't want to just, hope that you're going to see my stuff and kind of linger and like be a voyeur. And then one day reach out and be like, yo, let's connect. Like, hey, Chris, looks like we know a lot of the same people in real estate. Just curious, what made you decide to send me a Facebook friend request, right? And now you have a chance to, the pressure's off. You're like, hey, I liked your content, or hey, I was curious, it looked like you guys do this, what do you have going on, right? And now we're talking and connecting, right? And by the way, you can have an assistant do this initial process because it's the same thing. Otherwise, I get a lot of requests. I'm actually a little behind right now, but yeah, you'll get some inbound leads that way just for being who you are.
Josh, just take the initiative and don't just wait for them to passively check your stuff out. Like, go ahead and use it. That's cool. I appreciate it. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jason, what's your Facebook question?
Yeah. So I actually made a private Facebook group where I post exclusive content that I don't post on my regular social media. For example, articles that I might think is interesting. I go live on that and get some more insight. My question is, I've hit a plateau at like 120 something people in that private Facebook group that's designed to attract more passive investors. How do I get more traction in that private Facebook group?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we've got a private Facebook group, 120 people. I'm not an expert on Facebook groups. There's a lot to it. It takes a big commitment to keep it up. I mean, the biggest thing is consistency. Like if you're committed to it, keep posting in there, share it with your email list, share it with friends and family, tell them to join the group, right? If you're on podcasts, if you're marketing anywhere else, drive people to the Facebook group. But yeah, the biggest thing there is consistency. There's different books, different programs specifically on Facebook groups because there's so many nuances and it's changing. I'll tell you, like the thing that kills a lot of Facebook groups is if it's just one person posting, because then, other people aren't investing time. They're not committed. They don't care about the group. Right. So if you're doing the Facebook group, maybe ask some friends, ask some family members, just need a handful of people who can consistently be posting in there. And then, it opens up people to posting. So the other thing too is like, what's the title of the group, right? Having a title that's catchy. I think you can change it after creating the group, I believe. And yeah, like what's the intention behind the Facebook group? And like, it might be a long game where you just have to keep kind of posting and getting people in. But yeah, I mean, using any other social media, you have to drive people in the group, from maybe your public profile to the private Facebook group.
Okay, thank you very much.
You got it.
Well, this has been very helpful, I know, for me, and looking to raise capital. I mean, this is really what needs to be happening right now. We've got a lot of time on our hands. We're going into kind of a, what do you call it? A long winter. Is that right? How that goes? A cold winter. So you do need to be looking at avenues to create and to make connections with these outside connections. So I think Yakov, his company and what he's got, I think is a great way to start looking at building this out. So once again, Yakov, can you give us the way to connect with you again on that is www.
Find more, just like it sounds, findmoreinvestors.com/form. And so what'll happen is we'll take you to a short questionnaire, fill that out so we can find out a little bit more about you. Then you'll be redirected to my calendar. You can book a time for us to chat. One thing that I will say about that too, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, of course. Send me a request to let me know where you heard about me from. So I don't think you're one of those people, right? But yeah, if you're at all serious or interested or just curious to learn more, fill out that questionnaire and then you'll be able to book the time. I'm going to be traveling next week, so I think we have some openings the week after. But yeah, get on the calendar and yeah, look forward to hearing about people's capital raising goals. And just like you said, it's a great time to be hunkering down, building these systems. And this stuff really does compound when you start putting it in implementation.
Well, thank you so much for joining us once again. It's been super helpful and I appreciate you sharing that information with us.